My name's Tom Stone. I'm a senior research analyst here at I4CP, and most weeks I have the great pleasure of co-hosting our Next Practices Weekly series. Today I'm joined by my colleague Kirsten Queen, Membership Director at I4CP. Good morning, Kirsten.
Good morning, Tom.
Good to have you with us. You'll be leading the conversation with our special guest, who we'll get to in just a moment. Want to note, this is Next Practices Weekly, so coming up in early October, we've got great guests. You see them lined up there on the right, October 3rd, October 10th, and October 17th. We also periodically do events at different times of day for our friends and colleagues globally in the EMEA, Europe, Middle East, and Africa region time zones there, as well as APAC. And we've got one coming up on October 8th. We're going to have Hemerson Pais from Roche as the special guest for that event. So again, if you've got colleagues around the world, particularly in Europe or the Middle East, make sure that they're aware of this event coming up on October 8th. It's a timing that's a little bit better for them than 11 a.m. Eastern US time is. We also hold an in-person conference each year in Scottsdale, Arizona. This year it'll be in early March as opposed to later in March, as it often is, March 3rd through the 6th. You see we've announced the first sort of batch of speakers for the conference. We've got Peter Capelli from the Wharton School. We've got HR executives from companies like ServiceNow, Atlassian, Visa, Microsoft, and others. We'll probably have 25 to 30 speakers as we normally do, so more to come on that front. This is a special sort of unique conference. It's all about HR leaders, HR practitioners. There is no expo hall. There are no vendors at this conference, so no one hitting you up in the hallways or over lunch for sales purposes. Just all of you connecting with each other and with our wonderful speaker lineup. It's not listed here on the slide, but I believe we still have a promotion going. A lot of people are already registering, of course. I think by mid-November, we have a pretty significant discount that's available. So if you haven't registered yet, but plan to, certainly register by mid-November to get that discount. The link for this, as Zeta's put in the chat, i4cp.com/conference. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to you, Kirsten, to lead the conversation. For everyone else, if you could keep the chat open, use that as your means for interacting with us today, ask questions of our guest, and I'll be watching that throughout the call.
Thank you so much, Tom. I appreciate that. I am very pleased this morning to welcome Kim Jones, Managing Director of Talent Strategy and People Experience at PwC. In my experience, she's really smart, thoughtful, and fun to work with. Kim, you told us last week that you just completed your 5th half marathon. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You're welcome. For those of us who are not runners, what is it about, like me, what is it about marathons that attracts you, and how is this latest one in Hawaii?
Oh boy. You know what? For me, it's just a way to keep me in the gym and keep me training and keep me focused on being healthy. I'm a big goal-oriented person. So if I have a piece of paper that tells me every day how many miles I'm supposed to run while I train, the types of foods that I should eat, and I can check the box each day, it's like the rush of the serotonin or whatever it is. It makes me feel good. So it just keeps me healthy. It keeps me healthy. And then after I'm done, I feel really good about myself and kind of bask in my own glow for a little while before it's time to start with the next one.
You should. I love it. Congratulations. And, of course, as we know in human capital practices, what gets measured gets done. So
Hey,
standing application in your personal life. So I think those on the call are very well aware of PwC, and I believe that you have shared an overview slide with us about the business. Could you walk us through that? And could we pop that slide up?
I sure can. I'm happy to do that. And first, let me just say, I was thinking about this morning as I was coming in. I was like, this is a wonderfully auspicious occasion. I have to tell you all, I feel like I'm introducing my baby to the world. This is the first time that we're speaking publicly about what we've done around career development, which I know we'll get to in a little bit. And I'm just really grateful to I4CP for the opportunity to talk about this, and to all of you for having the interest. So yes, we will start with an overview of PwC. You may be aware that we are commonly known as one of the Big Four professional accounting firms. You see on the slide a number of facts about us. We've got over 75,000 individuals who are part of our US firm. We do operate as a network of firms. We have 200 plus offices in pretty much every major city around the world. So it's a huge organization in addition to what we have here in the US and Mexico. We provide audit, tax, and consulting services, and we cover a huge chunk of the Fortune 500 and the Fortune 1000. So, we're proud of that. But it does make for a very demanding, very fast-paced, very high-performing environment, which creates some, let's say, challenges or opportunities whenever you're trying to push through a people agenda in a firm of this size.
Yep, I can imagine, and we'd love to hear a little bit more about your background and your experience as well. We know that you had a 4-year stint in finance, actually, with PwC right out of university, which we now know is Oklahoma.
Yes,
Yep,
University of
all roads lead to
OU.
Oklahoma. And then you spent a little over 3 years in finance at Southwest Airlines before returning back to PwC, where you've been since then, in a variety of HR roles. So what led to your switch from finance to HR, and what from your finance education and background has been most useful to you?
Yes, I love that question. I tell you, every time I think about this, it takes me aback. I am almost at my 30-year anniversary at PwC coming up in a couple of weeks. And again, it's just so weird to think about that it's been that long. But yes, you're right. I actually started in client service with our firm. I have a master's degree in accounting. I was a CPA. I was doing audit work. As part of our overall experience at PwC, we always, of course, encourage people to focus very clearly on their client work. That's why we're here. But to also do other types of things that benefit the firm and benefit each other, benefit our people. One of those things, for example, might be helping with recruiting as we're going on college campuses and educating them about PwC and the opportunities that are here for a career. Through some of that extracurricular types of activity, I discovered just how much I really loved and had deep passion for the people side of the business. I could do the numbers and I could do the audits, but I really, really got a charge from working with our people. And so it was at that point that I considered a career transition, I'm going to say, and was fortunately able to stay with PwC to do that. So you're right, I went from the client service world over to the people world, and have had, gosh, probably 8 or 10 different roles over the years within the people space. Everything from working in diversity to working in recruiting to leading HR teams to the role that I have now, leading one of our people team centers of expertise.
Well, can you tell us a little bit more about your current role, kind of what's included in your remit, and how does that work?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So I lead a COE that's called Talent Strategy and People Experience. And we have about 25 people across 6 different teams who wake up every day basically trying to figure out new ways to make our environment at PwC the best that it can be for the people who work here. As I said before, it's a very demanding environment, and I always think of it in my own mind as trying to find the right balance between nurturing and caring for our people and the relentless demand that comes every day, and trying to find a sweet spot in between there where we can feel like we're sustained against the demand and also that people care and want to help us grow, which I think that we find that at PwC. So I lead teams that do everything from bring diverse talent into the firm and help them earn a college degree. We have something called the While You Work program that gives college credit and partners with a major university to help people meet that milestone, being able to graduate and then come to work for us full time. We have a program on the other end of that spectrum for more tenured individuals at PwC who are considered key talent, and we are developing them to become potential partners in our firm. And you might be aware that we are a partnership. We're not a typical corporate type entity with the CEO. We have what's called a senior partner and the senior partners leadership team that runs our firm. We've got close to 5,000 partners at this point, and we operate in sort of like a pyramid structure. You have the 5,000 or so partners here, and then you've got the 70,000 or so people at varying seniority levels that make out the rest of that pyramid. So we have our key talent program that helps to develop future partners. And then maybe in the middle of those two ends of the spectrum, I have teams that basically care for the development, the accelerated development of our people. And that's where the career development program that we'll talk about falls into place. Maybe more commonly known as performance management, but we like to think that it incorporates something that's more holistic than just that strict discipline.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm curious, broader in human resources in PwC, kind of how is that structured, and what is the culture like as an organization? You mentioned fast-paced, and certainly we know it's focused. How else would you describe it?
Yeah, so I'll give a brief description of how we're structured with our HR team, which we call our people team here within PwC. I mentioned at the top of my remarks how we are organized around audit work, tax work, consulting work, and then we have a business services team that cares for the internal functions of the firm and for our people. And the way that our people leadership team is organized is we have a people leader that heads up each of those functions. So the audit, the tax, the consulting, so on and so forth.
In pairs with the operations lead?
That's right. And then we also have leaders that care for the major functions of PwC. So for example, talent acquisition, learning and development. And then we have leaders like me who are leading the centers of expertise and are responsible for the thought leadership and for bringing new and innovative ideas into our firm to be rolled out to our people and hopefully keep us at the forefront of what's coming in the future. So that's kind of how we're organized.
Okay, perfect. Well,
and then the culture, let me hit on the culture because you asked part B of your question. So I'm just going to try to toss out some adjectives. So we already talked about fast-paced, demanding, typically very intense, organized, analytical. I mean, you think about a firm that has a whole lot of auditors and accountants in it. And so very data-driven and focused on analytical, logical type thinking. Also a culture that's very skilled in relationships. If you think about it, our bread and butter is supporting our clients and giving them good solutions for whatever problems or challenges they're facing. And so that requires being able to interact with, on a very effective basis, a whole host of people across all different kinds of backgrounds and disciplines and industries. And so we operate in teams, and those teams can change over the course of the year. I, as an employee, might be on 10 or 12 different teams in any given year with a different makeup of people. And so by necessity, you need to develop those interpersonal skills that help you click with another person very quickly and be able to establish trust and be able to work effectively for our clients. So in a few words, that's how I would describe us.
Yeah, those all make a lot of sense and definitely resonate with the experience with which I've interacted with folks from PwC. What you just mentioned was having been on a great number of teams and the essential nature of networking and relationship building within those teams. It's reflected in our latest research on the team network effect, which maybe Zeta can pop that into the chat for our members to access. When you and I first started working together, you used a term for priorities at PwC that I had not used myself as a former practitioner. You called it big rocks. Could you tell us a little bit about the PwC process to identify big rocks?
Yes, I can. So I mentioned a couple minutes ago about the fact that we're led by a senior partner. His name is Paul Griggs, and he has a senior leadership team that we call our operating committee. Our Chief People and Inclusion Officer, Yolanda Seals-Cofield, is a key member and a very vocal member of his leadership team. And every couple of years or so, depending on what's going on in the external environment, that team will take a big step back and think blue sky of what do we need to do within our firm to push ourselves forward and to try to always feel like we are trailblazing and at the forefront of trends that are coming down the way. There's a lot of work done to try to see into the future and to understand trends and understand how we can get ourselves ready for the future. And then they determine certain areas that we want to focus on in the firm. Now, lucky for me, our senior partner and our leadership team, they are very dedicated to our people and to our people agenda. So we have a lot of support in the different things that we want to do. They then, as they kind of have a big picture, they will focus on certain areas. So I'll give you a perfect example. Some of you may have read in the media about our My Plus strategy, and I think I have a slide that describes My Plus.
Yeah.
That was the latest and greatest iteration of us doing that blue sky thinking, trying to get ourselves future ready, and looking at the areas that our people were telling us they wanted and needed, coupled with what we knew our business wanted and needed. And we decided to reimagine, as we like to call it internally, our people strategy.
Mm-hmm.
And we decided to focus on 4 areas that you see on the slide. And really, it was more about trying to push ourselves into the future and understanding that we wanted to have big rocks in each of these areas across a 3-year strategy that we wanted to try to implement. I can give you a couple of examples if you think that might be helpful.
Absolutely, please do.
Okay. All right. So one of the areas that we wanted to take a look at is total rewards.
Mm-hmm.
Just in July, a couple months ago, we launched within our firm something called Milestone Rewards. And it was all an effort to respond to what our people said they wanted, which was more personalization, simplification of a lot of things that we do within the firm, transparency, and the agency to make choices and choose their path within their career here.
Okay.
So one example for you would be the My Milestone Rewards program, where we are recognizing people based on tenure versus what we used to do in the past, which is recognized based on promotion. Now, promotions are still celebrated in a very big way, but we wanted the ability to recognize more people more frequently in ways that mean the most to them. So for example, when you reach the 3-year mark, you've been at PwC for 3 years, you have choices that you can make across a menu of rewards types of items. So for all of our people, it can be cash. You can decide that you want cash, and that is fine. Or you can decide that you want a well-being experience. And we will send you off to a well-being retreat at a really nice hotel, that's got a great spa and a well-being type program. You can also choose to participate in what we call a purpose activity or purpose event. And we have had people who have gone off for a couple of weeks and done projects with Habitat for Humanity, for example, or gone to another country and done some sort of service activity. And then you can also opt to have time off. So we have sabbaticals of varying lengths, depending upon the tenure, the time you've been at PwC. And you can just take time off if that's what you would like to do whatever, to travel the world, to spend time with your family, whatever you would like to do. So that's one example.
Okay,
yeah.
So sabbaticals are self-determined. There's no specific criteria for those.
You can do whatever you'd like to do. Yeah.
That's
and so that
amazing.
was our way of building in choice where people can
Mhm.
choose, at any given point in their lifetime, what means the most to them at that point. And it's predictable. They know the different points at which in their tenure that they will get to participate in a program like this.
Okay, that's great. Have you already picked yours for your upcoming amazing milestone?
I have now. I've got a few years because I just had a sabbatical not too long ago.
Okay.
But let's just say I haven't decided for sure. I'm thinking about a few things, and it's probably going to involve travel because I'm a big travel buff.
Outstanding. Okay, tell us a little bit more about the development and the always a PwC aspects. We did have one PwC alumni identify themselves in the chat, so I'm sure we'd love to hear about both of those things too.
Welcome. Hey, PwC out there. Okay, so development, that one is around focusing on how we can develop our people even faster in an even more effective way. I mean, we are our people. That is what we have to offer to our clients. And we're always looking at ways to reach them, to have them be at the forefront of the skills that they need to develop, the different industries that are developing externally, and how do we get our people ready to match the moment and be able to serve our clients. So one example that I can give you of that is AI, right? Everyone's been talking about AI for months and months and months at this point. And one of the things that we did within PwC is we made a billion with a B, $1 billion investment around AI to not only upskill our people so that everybody raises their base level of understanding of AI and how we might use it in order to serve our clients better and to be more efficient with our work within PwC, but also to be able to use tools that have been specifically designed using AI for our people. So one example of that would be Chat PwC we have,
Yep.
and it's kind of like our own internal Chat GPT that is very tailored to the types of things that we need to do and know in order to help our clients with whatever challenge they have. So one example there, we're diving deep into AI in that development space.
Outstanding. And then how does always a PwCer show up? What does that look like?
Yeah, so always a PwCer, and again, shout out to the alum that's out there. We are being much more intentional about being open with the fact that a lot of people who come to PwC will not stay at PwC for their whole career. I talked about that pyramid structure, right? And for a lot of people, it still holds true that they will come to PwC to get a very fast-paced, quick learning and professional development experience for a number of years with a plan to then take that outside of PwC, go to an external company and learn and grow and thrive at that company. So always a PwCer is referring to knowing that we will have alumni out there and wanting to put our arms around them and help them have a soft place to land when they decide to leave. Through our client connections, through other connections that we have, we may know of great opportunities, great roles for people to take outside of PwC once they decide to leave. We will help them with resume prep, with interview practice, with all of the types of things that will help them land that opportunity. And once they're out there, they are part of our PwC alumni family, as we feel they are. And so we'll have different programming and connection points with them throughout. So they are always a PwCer, even if they decide to leave.
Outstanding. It sounds a lot like a career development center being available to university alumni after
There you go.
graduation. Okay, outstanding. And I
Yeah.
think Tom was going to point us to some questions in the chat. This
Oh.
slide is
Yeah.
spurred a bunch of questions. Tom,
Okay.
go ahead.
Yeah,
Great.
before we move on, just a couple of quick questions. One, just a clarification. Tracy's asking some of the things you talked about under total rewards, the cash well-being retreats, maybe particularly the sabbaticals. Are those available to everyone at every level or only certain groups? If you could reiterate on that.
We have a menu that our people have, and depending upon your tenure, you get certain rewards. In most cases, it's cash or something else, cash or a well-being reward. We have certain more tenure levels where it's cash and a certain reward. So it just depends. As you might imagine, the longer you've been here, the sweeter the reward. But yeah, there's a menu of opportunities for our people to take advantage of.
Yeah. And then Robert had a question. He said, great insights into the PwC people strategy here. Kimberly, can you share how PwC's people strategy is connected or influenced by your DE&I strategy?
Yeah, so it's all intertwined. Anything that we do in the people space has DEI woven in. And I'll tell you, one of the things that I'm so glad that we've done as a firm most recently with the new senior partner that came in as of July 1, we merged what were in the past two separate functions. We had a people team and we had a purpose and inclusion team. And it worked really great and was still working well. But we decided, again, thinking into the future and how do we need to evolve ourselves, it's time to make those two even more interwoven. And so that purpose and inclusion team is now part of the people team. Yolanda Seals-Cofield, who I mentioned before, she used to be our chief people officer, and it stopped there. Well, she's now our chief people and inclusion officer. So everything that I've talked about that's part of our people strategy has DEI woven in a variety of ways.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for that overview. PwC actually won an I4CP Next Practices Award in 2023 for MyPlus, so we're delighted to have heard about some of the evolution of the content and see an update. Thank you so much. Tell us about career development.
Yay, this is my baby. Okay. So talking about the My Plus strategy and all the different things, the My Milestone rewards, the Always a PwCer. One other big rock that I'll mention as part of that, we call it My Marketplace. And it is an AI technology driven new platform that we built to help match our people to different opportunities that exist within PwC. If you think about a firm that has 4 large practice areas, 75,000 people, it's often difficult to understand all the different opportunities for projects that are out there. Sometimes it was through word of mouth or who you knew.
Mm-hmm.
We now have this marketplace platform where there are opportunities in a much more transparent way. Transparency is key. Those opportunities are posted and people can be matched to those opportunities based upon their skills profiles, or they can express interest by raising their hand to say, I would like to build certain skills or work on certain types of projects, and they're matched through the technology. So that's one of our big rocks that I want to mention as well.
Well, thank you. As a real quick follow-up to that one,
Yeah.
are people actively and passively matched, or like, so does a hiring manager see here's who all you could consider, or is it really just people raising their hands?
It's both. It's
Okay,
both.
wow.
Both are built into the platform. Yeah, we hit it from all sides.
Interesting. That
Yeah,
is interesting. We might have to learn more about that in the future as well. Okay, great.
good. I'd love to. Okay, so now to the big rock that's mine. I call it mine because my team has been working on this for the last couple of years. I mentioned that our My Plus strategy is a 3-year strategy, and we're in year 3 now.
Mhm.
And as part of year 3, the big rock that we unveiled to the firm last month is called career development. And career development, as I said, is also another name for performance management, if you will, but I like to think of it as something that's bigger and more holistic than that. The reason that we started down this path is we had a process in place that part of me doesn't even want to tell you, but I will. It had been in place since 2014, so very old in a lot of ways, even though it was still effective and still did a lot of what it was built for. It's just a really long time to have the same process, the same assessment forms, the same guidance in place. And we decided that it was time to do a big refresh. And so that's what we did. We started off by, as we always do, listening to our people. If we were to update our performance management process, what are some of the things that we should consider? And that's when we heard a lot of the feedback and themes around something more personalized. They felt like what we had before was more of a one-size-fits-all approach, which was okay, but could be much better. So something that was much more personalized, something that was even more focused on development as opposed to focus on figuring out an assessment, a performance rating. It had kind of devolved to what's the performance rating going to be at the end of the year. Not that that's not important. It is. It helps us decide on compensation adjustments and bonuses at the end of the year. But really what this is all about is trying to develop our people. And they wanted a process that did that in a better and more direct way.
Mhm.
We also had what I'll just call some perennial challenges. Grade inflation, not wanting to give candid feedback, not really understanding the difference between performance and progression. So there were a number of things that we thought, you know what, if we just have a clean slate on this, maybe we can build something that addresses some of these challenges that have been so difficult to conquer over time. So that's what we did. We stepped back, we got in a room, we had blue sky thinking and tried to figure out how can we also bring technology in, bring some AI in to make this more of a consumer experience, and dare I say, make performance management feel much more fun. I don't know if anyone's ever used the word fun with performance management, but at least enjoyable, how to make it more enjoyable and how to really focus on the benefits of it versus the process itself.
Putting some
So
rainbows in that blue sky, I see.
yes, yes,
Okay,
yes, yes. So
got it.
when you think about the vision, and I'll just hit on a few things on the slide here, we have what we call the Involved PwC Professional, which I'll show you what that is, but it basically is the cornerstone of everything that we do in performance assessment. It's expectations for how we expect our people behave. And it's not just a framework for the US firm, it's for our whole global network. So around the whole globe, we're all using this same framework. We also talked with, I don't even know how many hundreds of thought leaders, both inside our firm from our consulting advisory practice, as well as outside of our firm, to understand the trends and just make sure that we had a good hold on what's out there that we needed to consider as we were developing this new process. And then, like I said, we wanted to use technology as much as we could to really modernize the way that we were doing things. So what we ended up with was these career development components. So we have new performance measures. So what is it exactly that our people are being assessed against? And for the first time ever, we're telling our people, like in a very standardized way, here are the things that you will be assessed against, and here are the priority areas. We built a new assessment form, and that's what's called the new snapshot. And we put with that what we call a reinvest snapshot. The reinvest piece of it is encouraging our people to contribute to external community, to do the things like the recruiting work that I talked about, to do things to help make your team more efficient. So something in addition to the strict client work. We have a performance dashboard that is updated real time so people can see at any point in time how they are doing against those performance metrics that I mentioned earlier. First time we've ever had that.
Mhm.
And then we created something called a development leader role. So back to putting more emphasis on development of our people. There is a more senior person in the firm who is assigned a number of employees, and they would be the development leader for those employees and really be the owner, if you will, of all things related to the development of that individual over the course of a year.
And not necessarily their direct leader.
Not necessarily. It can be, but not always.
Okay. I'm curious about on the inputs that guided recommendations that where the evolved PwC professional shift from measuring impact to measuring desired behaviors. How can you tell us a
Yeah.
little bit more about that? That's interesting.
I can. Can we go to this slide? That's the PwC professional framework. I just want to flash that up for everyone so you can just sort
Okay.
of see. This is sort of our Bible, if you will, to understand how we should behave and how we should show up for ourselves and for each other.
Mhm.
One of the big shifts that we made with career development is we used to evaluate primarily on what people produce. So the deliverables, what impact did they have? And of course, that is super important. Of course it is. But we took it a step further to say, we are now not just going to talk about how we want you to behave and support each other in your teams. You're actually going to be assessed on your behaviors as well as what you produce. So for the very first time, we've created a new level of accountability on people behaving in the way that we would want them to as a PwC professional. So this framework that you see shows two dimensions: the trusted leadership, the distinctive outcomes, and then 6 core behaviors: inspires, empowers, evolves, champions, builds, and delivers. And what you can't see because it's probably so small is underneath that are examples of what we mean by each of those core behaviors. So this is our way to level set, create a standard, consistent understanding across our workforce of these are the ways that we expect you to carry out your work day to day in a way that's positive, that's supportive, that's curious and seeking to learn, that focuses on well-being, all the things that we know through all of the work that we've done within the firm, help people be successful.
Okay, great. I noticed that in the core behaviors, each of them has at least two facets. The inspires is I understand my impact and people want to work for me.
That's right.
How were those developed? Were they informed as well by your employee sentiment strategy and
That was
research?
some of it. Yeah. So that was informed by employee sentiment, by leader input. And it's funny, I can speak to this directly because I was in a room in Amsterdam where we were coming up, a small group of us coming up with our iteration of this framework. We had one previously that was a bit more involved and a little more complicated, and we were seeking to simplify and streamline. And honestly, it really was about stepping back and thinking about what do we feel like are the most critical aspects of how our people do their work that makes the whole firm successful. And after, I don't even know, 1,000 iterations, it feels like, of drafts that were socialized and contributed to, and that we got feedback on, this is where we landed. And I feel pretty proud of it. It's fairly simple, it's in common language, and our people tell us it's easy to understand.
Outstanding. I think that was one of the questions that I thought I saw up earlier in the chat as well, was one of the goals of this work to also simplify for the managers.
Absolutely. Yes,
Yeah.
to simplify for everyone, managers and everyone else as well.
All right, perfect. Wonderful. We have a little bit, I think the next slide goes into a little bit more about the pilot for.
Yeah, let me just describe this. So to take the step back, we thought big picture, big rock. What do we want to do? Old performance management's been in place since 2014. Still works okay, but it's time for a refresh. It's just time to get some energy behind this and really get people to focus on this in new ways. So we decided to create this career development process. We had a lot of different visioning sessions, lots of input from all parts of our business. And fast forward, we decided to pilot the process that we had created. We did that last year. Over a period of about 9 months, we had close to 3,000 individuals across the firm participate in a pilot where they worked through the new process using the new forms, all of that. At different points in time over those 9 months, we had feedback loops where we pulled them together and we said, you've used the new snapshot for the first couple of times. Give us your feedback on that. How do we make it better? You know, what were the positives? What were the constructive criticism? You know, how can we make this better? And so the pilot was very, very informative, as you can imagine, to what we ultimately rolled out. We talked to our people in terms of what's in it for you, and that's what maybe you see on the slide here. A culture where feedback is embraced, accelerating development is very key. Transparency, as I've mentioned, to know how you're performing. In the past, our people didn't have clear sight to that until the end of the year when we had our performance moderation calibration sessions. And now we have this dashboard where any day at any point, you can see how you're doing. We also wanted to have clearer expectations so people knew what was expected of them and what they needed to do to progress. So imagine those performance metrics that I mentioned where we're telling for the first time on paper, here are all the things that you're going to be specifically evaluated against. And then that personalization, we call it putting you in the driver's seat of your career. And that's a lot where that development leader comes into play. And he or she is able to really understand where each assignee is in their career journey at PwC and help them to understand new opportunities to help them grow, skills that they might need to develop, help them understand their strengths and how to leverage their strengths going forward. So that type of thing.
Were the development leaders part of the pilot as well?
They sure were. We had a work group of what we used to call, they used to have a different name, and we pulled them together and decided on this development leader name and what the responsibilities would be for those folks.
Okay, we had
That's one of the things that came up in the chat was from Monique, just about the development leader role. I think when you first mentioned it, it maybe wasn't clear if that was the person's full-time job, like they have a portfolio of employees that they're assigned as development leader, or is that something they do in addition?
It's something they do in addition, and it kind of goes back to what I was saying when I talked about our clients are always front and center. I mean, that's the main thing that we're doing day in and day out. But there are other aspects that we encourage our people to do that contribute to the community, contribute to the firm, contribute to each other. This would be one of those examples as development leader. It's over and above the client work, but it's for those individuals who have a heavy hand in helping folks more junior to them grow and advance in the firm.
Great, thank you for that. And then Rebecca just asked a question, which I think maybe we were going to get into here upcoming, about the dashboard. How is that informed, and are employees getting sort of constant 360 feedback? How does that work?
So that's a beautiful segue. So maybe if we go, I wanted to show you a couple of quick screenshots of what our performance evaluation form looks like. We call it the snapshot. And what you're looking at is the form. That's it. It's not multiple pages. It's not a whole lot of words. It's very what we consider to be streamlined and simple, especially compared to what we've had in the past. Each of these questions is based upon the 6 core behaviors that I read through before: the inspire, empower, evolve, etc. And then individuals are assessed on a 4-point scale, plus a need more time to observe if you should happen to need that. 4-point scale, and we picked an even number intentionally because sometimes we found people would default to the middle, whatever was in the middle, if you had a 3-point or a 5-point scale. So everything from inconsistently meeting expectations to going above and beyond. And each individual is assessed by their reviewer on those 6 behaviors and how they're demonstrating those behaviors. So that's it right there. What you see is our assessment form. And then we have a second part to the assessment. If you go to the next slide, that's for progression. And we talk to our people about the snapshot is meant to be just what it's called, a snapshot in time, how an individual performed on a particular project. The progression piece of it is looking more at how is that person progressing towards the next level. Think back to our pyramid structure. It's fairly standard that after every couple of years, a person formally gets promoted to the next staff level. So from associate to senior associate, from senior associate to manager, from manager to senior manager, and so on and so forth until you get to partner. So progression is quite a topic on the tops of minds of everyone in our firm, because that's kind of the goal as you're looking to progress. So our progression assessment, again, very streamlined, very simple, very straightforward. It just says, based on my observations as a reviewer on this project and based on what is said in the PwC professional framework, is this person basically ready to move to the next level? This makes it very clear for our people, clearer than it's ever been before. And very interestingly, we deliberately have a box for comments in both the performance part that you just saw on the last slide and on this part, because our people are hungry for that actual developmental feedback. And even though sometimes it can be hard to give, we are saying it's required that you give 2 strengths and 2 developmental areas on each assessment so that the person can learn and grow and you can have conversation around it. So that's the snapshot. And then you asked about the dashboard. So let's pop to that. And that's actually the last slide that I have for you. So the performance dashboard, what's in it for you? So this again is summarizing the feedback from the snapshots. And it's also summarizing how people are doing versus their performance metrics. So as an example, a couple of the metrics that we have is how is it looking in earning revenue for your client? You know, what is that number? Another one might be, how utilized are you? So if you have 8 hours in a day, how many of those hours is being spent on billable work serving our clients? You know, what percentage is that? And we have goals around both of those. So this dashboard will show you how you are doing at any point in time against those goals. So again, more transparent than it's ever been before, because we've never had something quite like this. It's real-time data, and the development leader can see the dashboards for his or her assignee. So they also have the data to be able to help guide their assignee in whatever direction they need to go. So that's the dashboard. And then the last slide that I have for you is just a screenshot, just to give you a sense of what our dashboard looks like. We think it's fairly simple to understand. Our piloters told us the same thing. We use graphics and short descriptions to, again, help people easily consume and understand where they may have gaps that they want to work on, or where they're really strong in and they want to keep up the good work. We say here that it supports 2+2 coaching conversations, which is one other thing that we built into this process. And it's so simple. It is all about, again, 2 strengths, 2 developmental areas. That is the basis of your coaching conversation. Full stop, that's it. And you would be surprised, maybe not, knowing we're all people, but our employees have been surprised at what a robust coaching conversation just that simple construct seems to drive. So we're really, really pleased about that.
It's nice that it keeps it very succinct and very focused. How frequently are they having these conversations again, if I missed that?
We encourage what we call in the moment feedback. We don't want people to wait for the time to document in a snapshot performance, which we usually say after 80 hours or so, after a couple weeks of work is kind of the general guideline of when to document performance in a snapshot. But we encourage people to give feedback every day in the moment. You just left a client meeting and you did some great things as we're walking back to our office. Let's talk about that, kind of a thing. So 2+2 can happen anytime. Now, I will tell you, we do have firm-wide pushes to make sure that these conversations are happening by mid-year as well as at year-end. We remind everybody because everyone's very focused on their client work. And so we have a push actually right now. I just hosted our mid-year webcast for our talent consultants to do some of the activities at mid-year to get people's minds really on this and focused on looking at developmental opportunities for the rest of the year.
Okay, outstanding. Tom, what other questions do we have in the chat? I see a whole bunch in there.
Yeah. Once you got into the nuts and bolts of this, Kimberly, the questions started flowing in.
Oh,
so
good.
we will not be able to get to all of them. But one question that came in from Tracy, is this the dashboards, the technology, is this a homegrown system or do you have a partner platform?
It is homegrown. We always start looking outside at vendors who might have something close to what we need. But often we don't find it. I don't know. PwC, we always have special stuff we want to put in it. And so we ended up building our own. So over the past, I guess, 9-10 months or so, we had a team of tech professionals that designed and built it for us.
Great. And then two people, Kristen and Nicole asked, do you have any even just sort of round number percentages of people that sort of fall into each grouping? And then related to that, do you force any sort of bell curve or something like that onto it, or just let people fall where they do?
Yeah, it's a great question. We do have what we call managed distributions that we apply at the end of the year, primarily to figure out compensation and even more so the annual bonuses. So we do have that. We do not call it forced because there is latitude. We don't force just for the sake of forcing it, but we do try to have sort of bright lines of distinction in performance that we categorize people into. And it does follow a typical bell curve for the most part.
Okay. And then Kim was wondering about sort of the change management and culture journey wrapped around this. I mean, you're doing a pilot, but so many big corporate initiatives in HR and in other areas of the company, a lot of the success or failure comes down to change management and culture.
Oh
So
my
what
goodness.
can you share more on that?
It's so true that let's just say the tools and the snap, all that's like sexy, shiny, right? Gets a lot of attention. It's fun. But the real point of whether or not you're going to be successful is how the behavior changes. I mean, we all know that. Sometimes it's hard to focus on some of that because there's all this other stuff going on. But me and my team have talked about that quite a lot. I mentioned inflation of assessments. People always want to kind of rate people high and avoid maybe that harder conversation. That doesn't necessarily change because you have a new shiny snazzy tool to use for the assessment form, right? That's just part of it meant to support. So we have a lot of attention, and we're actually in that phase right now. We launched our new tools, the dashboard and the snapshot, a couple of weeks ago. And now we're turning to how do we make sure that all the attention that's being placed on all the newness of the things, how do we sustain that momentum and focus and really push on the behavior change and not let up? So it's a matter of educating, it's a matter of towing the line, looking on the back end at some of the snapshots and those reviewers who tend to rate everyone more highly, or on the opposite side, tend to rate everyone at a more lower level, and trying to normalize that and build some consistency and educate people about how they should be assessing people. Or even to the point where in the comments, they're just saying, continue to do this, continue to do that, which is not, not always the best developmental feedback, let's say. And so it's almost like hand-to-hand combat. We're just working it every day on an individual level with our talent consultants and our development leaders out there and our people to just keep pushing on the things that will really make this go. And that's the behavior change.
Well, I think you just answered the other question I was going to surface. Amy had asked about definitions and maybe calibration. And I think you just sort of spoke to that as part of the process. So.
Yeah, we have written guidance. We just finished in person what we call career development immersion sessions. I just taught 2 sessions here in the Dallas office where we had our employees come in from their clients for an hour and sit and focus and learn about the career development process. And it was about the tools, yes, but it was more about the why of what we're doing it and how it's going to help them develop when they lean into the concepts that we're rolling out. So we feel good about it. We're gonna keep on plugging away.
I'm going to jump in with one more question from Mike Manning. He says, is AI giving any of the feedback, or is it purely from the employee's leader and survey and so on? And do you have any plans for AI being involved here?
Yeah, we do have plans for that. So there's a little bit of AI in there now in helping to assemble the dashboard. But in those of you who've rolled out technology, you know, there's like version 1, and then there's going to be a version 2, 3, and 4 over the next 18 months that we'll be rolling out. And one of the first ways that we plan to use AI is to have it help a reviewer do the first draft of the snapshot, you know, based on a number of different inputs that the reviewer can then go in and not just face a blank page, but have something to start with. So that's one example. Also to write about the reinvest snapshot. So say that I've been involved in diversity activities in the firm. I've been part of our inclusion networks. And as part of that, I led an event in our office to help people understand about blind spots or microaggressions. And so the AI would come through understanding where I've charged my time and do a first draft of what I would otherwise write on my own. And there are a few other areas that we're looking at as well. But yeah, it's gonna be really fun over these next 18 months to see what we can do.
All right, outstanding. This has absolutely been fascinating. I'm so
Oh,
grateful that
good.
we've gotten a deep dive into the work that we've been talking about in our quarterly briefings for the past year and a half. And I'm curious for HR leaders who are looking one day to be in your shoes, what development or growth opportunities would you encourage them to
Oh
explore?
boy. Well, I love that question. And I think I'll tie it to some of the things that I wanted to leave everyone with. And one of those is to not be afraid to take on the big challenge, because often that's where the biggest opportunity is. And I'll use me and PwC as an example. Like I said, our old system had been in place for a decade, which is a really long time for anyone, but especially for PwC when we pride ourselves on always being on top of the newest thing. But it was a hard one to touch because performance management is such an emotional, personal thing with lots of opinions about, you know, it's not easy. But I would tell people, if you want to be a true impactful leader, don't be afraid to take the hard thing on. Sometimes you might have fits and starts. You might look at it one year and everyone decides now is not the right time, but keep pushing on it, because eventually it will be the right time. And you know it's going to make a huge impact on the entire organization. So it's worth it. It's worth that difficulty. So that would be one. Another one would be listen to your people. We can all think, I've been at PwC almost 30 years. I know what everyone wants. Well, sometimes I don't know, you know, and it's always informational for me and my team to talk to the people that we're supporting, our client service individuals, and hear directly from them what their experience is, what it is that they feel they want and need. So I would just say listening is so key. And maybe the last thing I would say is agility. Oh my goodness. I have had many opportunities to exercise agility just this week, much less the last 18 months as we've been on this project. And I would say just hone your skills to be able to move in whatever direction you need to move in, always keeping your eye on the North Star, as they say. Keep your eye on the prize of what it is you're trying to do, and let that fuel you whenever the times get tough.
That is wonderful advice. Thank you so much, Kim. I really appreciate your time, and thank you so much for your generosity of information and your candor as well. Thank you very much.
Oh, well, thank you. And thanks again for this opportunity. I'm so glad to speak to all of you.
Thank you. Back to you, Tom.
Yeah, great job, Kirsten, for steering the conversation today. And thank you again, Kimberly. Great sharing. Really had so many great questions coming through in the chat. Sorry we couldn't get to quite all of them, but I think we got to most. Want to remind everyone that Next Practices Weekly from I4CP is available for recertification credit hours with both SHRM and HRCI. So if that applies to you, if you've got one of those certs, I know it can be difficult to attain all of your research credit hours that you need. Just jot down the relevant program ID or activity ID. It's also over in the chat, as Zeta put it over there, if that's easier to copy and paste from. Once again, thanks everyone for joining this week. Thank you, Kimberly. Thank you, Kirsten. Thank you, Zeta. Another good event. Hope everyone can join us again next Thursday and on subsequent Thursdays. Same time, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. Until then, hope you have a great rest of your week and weekend coming up. Bye-bye now.